All yours, Ushmi. Take over, please.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you, Udit. Thank you, Sheetal and Vibhor, for giving me this opportunity, and thank you all of you for joining today's sessions. I am Ishmeet Pindra. I am UiPath MVP and a senior RPA developer in Wunderman and Thompson. I hope all of you are able to see my screen. Just let me know in the chat if you face any issue. Okay, so today's topic is how to improve and optimize bots performance. So let's talk about agenda. Today we are going to discuss why link queries are important, where they should be used, and how to develop a link query. Then we will be talking about how to add data of any data type into a queue, because all of us know that by default we can only add data of basic data types such as string, integers, double into the queue. Then finally, we will be seeing a demo of how API automation and what is the difference between API and UI automation and which one is better. So the first topic, link queries. I will be giving an introduction about link queries and then we will see a scenario. Link queries or language integrated query was introduced in .NET in 2007. It was necessary. It is necessary to learn link query because if you will notice, every single data type or every single data source is having its own query language. For example, SQL is having its own query language, and XML is having its own query language and everything. And as the technology grows, number of query language grows, and integrating them with older technologies become more difficult. So link queries allows a unified solution of to this particular problem. So if you are talking about any type of collection, if you are talking about any type of database, any kind of data sets or XML documents, you can use link queries to iterate over it, to filter some data out of it, and to apply some conditions over it. It really makes the task of a developer, task of filtering the data or to just to quickly see what is within a particular data set really easy. So let me, before showing you how to create a link query, let me give you a scenario of where we can use a link query. So in order to show you this thing, I'm having an input file available here. And the task in hand is that we have in a column numbers available. So you can see that we are having in total of 200 rows available with numbers ranging from 1 to 200. Our task is very simple. We just want to increment each and every number available here just by one. So let's see how we usually do it in UiPath. So let me close the Excel and let's load UiPath. In here, I have just added a basic code to, just to read the Excel file and do some time logging. So the first step that we usually do is after reading the Excel, we use for each row. So I will be doing the same thing for each row in data table. Obviously, a couple of you will be noticing that in the latest version of UiPath, for each row has been modified to for each row in data table. And I will be writing the data table name here. Let me zoom in a bit. Okay. The next step is to use an assign statement. I will be writing current row, and maybe I can give the index 0 here. And then here I will say in the value part, I have to actually increment the value of the very first column. So what I will be doing, I will simply say here current row dot item 0. Now, by default, it is of type object. In order to increment it, I have to treat it as an integer. So I have to do a typecasting. So I will simply say cint, and then I will say plus 1. Okay, and I will encapsulate it in the parenthesis and say dot to string, just to maintain, the previous data type which is available inside your Excel. Okay, with that done, what I will do now is I will simply go ahead and add a write range activity here. Let me copy a couple of details from here. I will copy this thing. Okay. So the file path is copied and I will simply write the data. So let's run this particular process and see how much time it actually takes for the bot to modify this data table. So let me do one thing. Let me enable the execution tree. So we have read the data table and we are modifying each row one by one. Please notice that we are only having 200 rows. This is a very small data set because what you need to consider is it is a one-dimensional data. Only one column. We are only having one column, and it is more than 10 seconds, and the loop is still running. This is the issue. This is the issue that we have to target, because if the bot is going to take so much time just to manipulate such a simple data, think about those scenarios where you are having millions of rows and maybe like hundreds of columns. In those scenarios, if you apply such a for loop, it will be a mess. Okay, now let's talk about a complexity. So this is like the complexity of this particular bot is currently O of n, which means depending upon number of rows that we are having, the time will increase. So it seems fine, because it also seems logical that as number of rows increase, the time will also increase. The difficulty arises when we actually nest the for loop. Okay, and as you must be noticing, I'm talking, it has been more than 20 or 30 seconds and the loop is still running. But nonetheless, if you implement multiple for loops, the time will increase drastically. And just to implement this very basic operation, it took 82.16 seconds, more than a minute, just to finish this. 8 seconds less than 1.5 minutes. Okay, now let me show you a simpler way, or you can think of like more performance, a more efficient way of implementing this. Okay, so first thing that I will do is, what I like to do is I like to start from very raw. Whenever I'm dealing with link queries, I always just read the data table and that's pretty much it for me. Okay, now before moving to how to create link query, let's see the syntax. So this is the structure of link query. And as you can see here, the first step is to obtain a data source. As I told you, data source could be anything. It could be a data set, it could be an array, it could be a list, it could be a data table, anything. Okay, so you start from obtaining a data source, you define filters, you define grouping operations if you have to group, and finally, you define how you want to represent the result. That's it. These 4 conditions you have to take care of and you are good. And below, as you can see here, I have shown you like how a typical link query looks like. We start with from. Range is any placeholder variable that you can define. You don't have to define it in the variable panel. It is, you can think of it like a temporary variable. Then you define iterable or your data source, followed by where condition or the filters, grouping operators, and finally select operator. Okay, with the syntax in mind, let's go back to UiPath and let's create a similar kind of a query for us and try to replicate what we did earlier. And guys, just keep in mind the 82.16 seconds of time that we got. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just write a simple link query. And as I told you, I like to start raw. So here I'm going to use immediate panel. There are multiple benefits of using immediate panel, not only in this case, in many cases, but specifically in this case, you might want to test your link query out before you actually implement it in the value part of any assigned activity. Because even though it introduces performance improvement, it might be a bit complicated for someone who is looking at for the first time. So let's start with the very basic query, which is incrementing the number of the very first column. So I will say from row in my data table. Okay, So I have defined I have defined my temporary variable as row, and I have also defined my source, which is data table. Now, what you need to understand is that data table itself, like for loop can, for each row can iterate over it. But if you want to iterate, or if you want to iterate it over the, link query or any kind of lambda operators, what you need to do is you need to define a method here, which is as enumerable. What it does is it converts the data type of a data table into enumerable rows. So you can actually enumerate, or you can actually go through each and every row one by one. Okay. So with that said, let's go ahead and select our column. So we'll be select. So let's say, let's define a temporary variable here. We will say let column 1 is equal to row dot item. I will select the first column dot to string. Now, just like before, this is currently of string data type. Guys, there is a lot of noise coming in. I will really appreciate if we can mute the mic. Thank you.
Ishmeet, you can mute all at your end.
Got it. Thank you.
Mute all participants.
Yes, don't mute me. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's convert this thing into an integer. So I will say cint, and I will encapsulate it in this method. So we have converted the first column value into integer. Then we will increment it and simply convert it back into a string. Okay, now let's select it. So as you can see, we have actually incremented each and every each and every number here. And let me just go ahead and write dot to list. Okay, so that is looking good. But if you will notice one thing here, that even though this is this is having only one-dimensional data, the data type is enumerable row collection string. It is not of type, it is not of the expected type of data table. So how do we convert it into data table? Well, firstly, let's save this particular query. Okay, and I will stop the bot. Okay, I'm having the query on my notepad, on my clipboard. So that's cool. And I will use another assign statement. And here we are going to create a clone of the input data table. So basically, so probably we can call it dt out, dt underscore out. Let's change the data type. And let's define the, and let's say dt underscore input dot clone. What clone is going to do, it is simply going to clone the structure, not the data, but only the structure of the input data table, okay, into the output data table. So that you have the proper columns, but you don't have any of the rows. Let's wait for the bot to start. Okay, so we are at the breakpoint, and let me just modify the query a bit so that we can actually get the data table. So all that we have to do now is specify the data table, which is our output data table dot rows dot add. So we are adding a row here. Okay, keep this thing in mind. And we are now adding, we have to add column 1, but you cannot just add column 1, because see, the row item, any specific row is a collection of an array of row items. Okay, so you need to convert this column, which is a string, into an array. How do you do that? By specifying it in a very simple thing, by encapsulating it in a curly brace. With that done, as you can see, we are getting a very, unconventional output here. So in order to get a proper output, you have to type dot copy to data table. And with that, our data table is ready. Okay, so our data table is now ready. Our query is ready. So what we have to do is we just need to assign it here and write it in the Excel sheet. So what I will do now is I will simply say that assign dt underscore output, and I will assign whatever output we have created here. And then we will again use write range. Okay, and let's copy the file part. Sheet name is 1, dt output. Okay, now let's remove the breakpoint and let's see how much time it actually takes to run the bot now. Okay, so from 82 point something, I will say only 82 seconds. So from 82 seconds, we are down to 2.27 seconds. If you talk in terms of percentage improvements, so it's like 82. So just by doing this small step of creating a very simple link query, we have essentially achieved an efficiency of 97.23%. So think about a process in which you are having billions of data rows, and it is a very old code. And this is actual situation that I'm telling, that millions of data rows were available, and whoever developed it actually developed with the help of the for loops. So process actually took like hours to execute. Implementation of link queries changed the entire process, and the time taken by the process was just a couple of minutes. So for a developer, like you can think of it like you're gaining a new skill, but think from an enterprise perspective. Whenever you run a particular bot, you're consuming license. Okay, so if your particular process will take hours to run, no other process can run at least on that specific time with the same license. So you are actually consuming license at a point where maybe it is not required. So with the help of just this small thing, with the introduction of link queries, with the introduction of Lambda functions, I will show you a very basic example of Lambda function after this. But with the help of these small things, you can actually go ahead and get significant performance improvement. And with these performance improvements, you can actually save a lot of time, license time, which will eventually allow you to develop more process and deploy it in the saved license time. So this is the benefit of using link queries. Guys, I'm just going through the comments. If you have any comments, you can post them in the in the chat, and I will try to answer them. Okay, how can we work with duplicate column names or column with duplicate data? See, if you're having duplicate column names, unfortunately, you have to read the data table without the column names, without considering the column names, and then you have to essentially do your entire processing. That is the only way. Okay, this was a question asked by Sakshi. Okay, so with that, let me give you a very small example of the little brother of, as I like to think at least, the little brother of link query, which is Lambda functions. Okay, so let me just go ahead and read this data table. So in order to introduce Lambda functions to you, I will just change the scenario a bit. Now I don't want another data table with the numbers incremented by 1. What I want is, I simply want a list with a particular list with numbers incremented by 1. Now, as you just saw here, we can essentially create a very basic link query with two lists at the end, and it will do the job. It will do the job very well. But the question arises, since we don't want particular data table, and like whether there is a simpler way of achieving the same task. And the answer is yes, there is a simpler way, and this is how we achieve it. So what we can do is, we know that our entire input is available in input data table. Let me just go ahead and pop it out. So we know that our entire input is available in input data table. So what we can actually do here is, we can say input dot as enumerable. Then we have to use select function. And within select function, we will be defining lambda functions. I mean, essentially this is a lambda function. So I will be saying function x. What function x means? Now, as enumerable, like I told you, it converts the data type of data table into enumerable rows. Okay, so you can think of it like, now we have a collection of rows available. X represent a single row within that collection. Whatever operation you define here will be applied to each and every row, and you will be seeing the output. For example, if I simply type X here, you will be seeing each and every data row. Can you see it? Each and every data row is available here. Okay, but what if I just want to select the first item? I will say item 0. And as you can see, we got the first item. What if I want to just increment it by 1? Very simple, cint, and that's it. Okay, and now this is of data type enumerable row collection. In order to convert it to a list or an array, it is you can easily do it with the help of .toList method or .toArray method. So .toList, and that's pretty much it. Now you have a list of integers that came from a data table but are incremented by 1. It is as simple as defining this operation. Okay, just one thing, I forgot to increment it by 1 actually. So +1. Okay, so as you can see here, incremented by 1. It is as simple as using a basic lambda operation to do the job. Okay, so this is how we define lambda operators. Let me just do one thing. I will be posting the syntax of both the queries in the chat. Okay, you can basically just refer it whenever you have to use it next time. Okay, so let's go back to our slide and let's see what do we have next. Okay, so we talked about link, and as an additional thing, we also talked about lambda functions. Now let's talk about queue population. So the queue population is important because in most of our processes, we are utilizing queues. But sometimes it is required. I mean, with the help of process, like whatever the process we are automating, it's quite possible that the process might become more streamlined if you can upload some unconventional data types. So instead of uploading strings, you might be thinking of uploading entire data table or entire JSON, or any other data type you want, for example, entire collection. So the question arises, how essentially you do that? Because UiPath by default allows string, integer, decimal, and boolean. So in order to do that, we the technique that we use is serialization. Serialization actually allows us to convert an object of any data type into a stream of bytes. Okay, what it actually it allows us to convert a state of an object. It allows us to convert a state of an object, and it also allows us to recreate an object from the converted state. So so essentially you can think of it like, if you're having a particular data available in a data table, you can convert it into another data type, and then you can use it to upload it to queue. And I think most of you will be getting an idea like how we can now convert a particular data table into what data type through serialization, so that queue will accept it. And we will be talking about that really soon. So the recreation process, like once you have uploaded some item into the queue, after serialization, obviously once you will fetch it, you need to convert it back into its original type. The question is how you essentially do that. So the recreation process is called deserialization, and you have a very easy to use activity called deserialization activity available in UiPath Web Activities package. Okay, now in order to convert or serialize a particular variable or particular object, we will be using Newtonsoft library. And what we are going to do is we will be seeing like how we can convert a particular data type into string. Okay, so let's go back to UiPath and let's dock it, stop the process, and let me load my queue. Okay. Okay, so let's set up a scenario. The scenario is we are having a folder available in which we have multiple Excels. Now these Excels, just to make the scenario more relevant, these Excels are manually placed here, and these Excels can be, deleted at any point of time by the business, and a new Excel could be placed here. So your bot's task is to process this Excel and somehow retain the data. Okay, so obviously the first thing that will come to your mind is that probably it is best that I actually upload just a part of the Excel instead of uploading the entire data table. That's true, but think of it like this. Like, for example, if the processing of a single Excel is taking, let's say, 20 minutes, within those 20 minutes of time, probably someone might delete another Excel. So the data retention is not happening here. Okay, now in this scenario, in order to make sure that your bot does not fail just because of the data retention issue, you can actually upload the entire data into the queue so that you don't care whether the Excel is saved or not. And you can simply go ahead, and bot can simply go ahead and automate and do its job. Okay. So for this scenario to happen, let me just go back and let's do one thing. Let's add a for loop here. So the first step in order to automate this kind of step is we need a list of files that we actually need to upload. So firstly, let's get the list of files. I will simply say list files. And here we are going to write directory.get files. And I will specify data demo. Okay. And let's say list. Okay. Let's change the data type of list files to list. Okay. So we got our input. Let's apply a for loop. Okay, and let's specify a list of files here. Change the data type to string. Let's change the placeholder as file. Okay. Now here what we have to do is, like, this is probably the most important part. Step one is to read the actual file or get the data. So read range. So file, and let's do one thing. Let's this. Okay, sheet name is probably different, so I will open the Excel for this, and let's define a data table as dt_input. Now let me open the Excel and show you how the data actually looks like. Okay, so as you can see, it is a sales orders data table, and sheet name is sales orders, and it is having a couple of rows available. So we will be seeing how to upload this entire data into the queue. So with the sheet name, let's close this Excel and specify the sheet name here. Okay, now we have our data available. Let's see how do we actually convert it. So let's use assign. And now, as I told you, we are going to serialize the data table, and the data type that we are going to serialize it in is going to be string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a string variable, queue data. Okay, and let's simply open this up and write a very simple method here. So we will start with defining the library name, which is Newtonsoft.json convert. dot serialize object. Then we will define here DT input, and that's it. With this, the data type of data table, our data table is actually serialized, and we have a string object available with us. What we are going to do then is we are going to use add queue item activity. And here, let me just see my queue name. A second. It just logged out, in front of me. So just 1 second. Okay. In the meantime, it is logging in. Let us define the other things. Okay. So let us define the item information. So we will say, let's just keep it simple and say item. It is of type string, and we will be defining here string queue data. Okay. And we will hit on OK. Now, just go back here and get the queue name. Oh, never mind. We have resources as well. Let's refresh this. And it's demo. Okay. Queue name is demo underscore queue. Okay, so we through this we will be seeing like the queue will be having and some queue items available in it. So let me just go ahead and show you that currently queue is blank. This is demo queue available with us, and the queue is blank. Okay, let's run this process. We are expecting at least two. We are expecting 2 queue items to be populated after this. Okay, so we have read the Excel file and we have populated it in the queue. And I think this is also getting populated, and that's pretty much it. So let's go back in the orchestrator. Let's refresh it. And here, as you can see, we are having 2 new queue items available. And if you will view the details, you can see that we are having the entire data table available here. Okay. Now, the question is, how do we deserialize it? So let's go back and let's do one thing. Let's create another workflow. And let's get a get a transaction item. Okay. So we got our transaction item. Let's save it in transaction item. Okay. And now here, what we have to do is we have to place an activity of deserialize. Within here, we are going to specify transaction item. Specific content, and here we are going to define the key as item. Let me double check. Yep, it's item. Okay. And dot to string. Okay. Now we have to change the type argument from JSON link J object to data table, and let's change the let's define a variable here, DT input. Also, let me quickly add a log message here. DT input dot rows. We have just added it here for the breakpoint. Let's run it. So we got our transaction item, we converted it back, we converted the data back into the data table, and let's see how our data table looks like. Okay, so as you can see that our data table looks fine. Okay, so let's see how many rows it is having. It is having 43 rows. And let's go back here. And as you can see, it is perfect. We are having 43 rows, 44 if you include the header. But yeah, it is working fine. So this is how you can actually, upload a particular data of any data type into the queue. Now, this is one scenario where we have uploaded a data table. There is another scenario which I got an opportunity in which I got an opportunity of learning how to upload action item into the queue. So a scenario could be like, for example, you are actually having an action item. Okay, so for you have created an action item in the action center, and you are waiting for it to be completed. And for some reason, someone killed your bot, or your bot just stopped. So how do you perform an action on that specific action item? How you get to know that some action has been performed there? Well, in this scenario, just for the backup, if you upload each and every action item to the queue, and when your bot runs again, you fetch all the action items from the queues and then check whether they have been completed or not. You can actually make sure that each and every one of your action item is processed. Okay. And now there are a couple of questions regarding this. So the first question is like, in this, how to set the transaction status. So the setting up of transaction status is pretty similar. Why? Because in order to set the transaction status, you don't need specific content data. You need the transaction item object, okay, or the queue item object. So the queue item object is going to be same.
Ishmi, sorry to interrupt you. Could you please repeat the business case again? I missed that.
Okay. So first, I hope you got the first business case of like, of multiple Excel. I will tell you the second business case in which we had a long running process. And in order to cover a scenario that if the bot just stops, how will the action items that are actually available in the action center, how will they be covered? Because the action objects are stored in the memory. If the bot stops, the entire action objects are kind of dropped. So how do we actually store it? So you can actually store the action object into the queue, and once that action object has been once your bot stops, it can just fetch the data from the queue and process them back.
Okay, so Ishant, Ishmit, you are talking about that if somehow that bot is crashed, so my in-memory data is not lost, and I will take care with the help of queue by saving the action item in a queue basically.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
Got it? Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, let's move ahead. Considering the time, I will just dive into the next topic, and then we will be taking the questions. The next topic is API versus UI automation. I hope everyone knows the answer about that, but I still felt like I should be, focusing on this topic because this is kind of very important when it comes to any, type of automation. Also, I would have to, unfortunately, I have to mute every one of you because there is a lot of noise coming in. Okay. So firstly, let's talk about API. So API is application programming interface. On a very basic level, you can think of it like it allows two applications to talk to each other, and it allows easy access to data without building the entire infrastructure. So an example of this could be you need a login system, a secure login system, and Google is having a very well secure login system, but you will not go ahead and build a similar kind of a login system. What you will do, you will contact Google to get their APIs of the login system, and you will bake that API within your project. Okay, so that you don't, you actually don't put in effort just to build a functionality that is already being invented and well tested. So with help of these, you can actually save quite, you can save amount, or you can save time of development, you can save cost, and a couple of other things. But here we are going to talk about how you can save time with by using APIs instead of using UI automation. So when we talk about UI-based automation, many factors come into play. So some factors are like loading of particular, application, authentication, because in order to authenticate, there is a separate page. In order to get the data, there is a separate page. Then comes advertisements. So we will see an example like how actually having advertisements is going to increase the load time. And if the load time increases, the performance of the bot will definitely decrease. So let's consider the example of the day, and let me just load the site in a second. Okay, so this is the site that we are going to talk about today, and this is techcrunch.com. As you can see, I have disabled my ad blocker, and there are a lot of ads that are available here. Loading time is quite high, and fortunately, we don't have to actually log in here in order to get the data, but we will be seeing, even without login, how much time it takes to get the data from here. So the data that we are going to fetch from here is the headlines, the latest headlines. Okay, so I have already built a workflow for this. So let me just load that quickly. Okay, so let me explain the workflow. Obviously, we have taken a variable to monitor the start time. Then we are going to techcrunch.com. We are extracting the data using using data scraping. We are extracting just the titles and then printing them along with the total time that it took to extract the data. Let me run the bot quickly. So it has loaded the site. Probably now it is fetching the data. And soon enough, we will be seeing a message. Okay, so here is a message box. I have limited the amount of, the headlines that it fetches. But essentially, in order to fetch just this much data, it required 17.02 seconds. Okay, let's keep that in mind. And let me show you an alternate approach of this. So definitely techcrunch.com is a very well-known site when it comes to tech news and other things. So it in order to get the API, you have to actually spend money. But after a little bit of research, I was able to find a free option of news API. Using this particular site, you can actually get news from any web I will say from most of the sites in the world, and it is quite accurate in terms of like getting the latest news. We will be seeing. Okay, so let me go back to UiPath, and the load time of the previous item was 17 seconds. Okay, so let me load my API code. Okay, so just to give you a reference, this is Postman. Okay, like how have I built this particular activity? This is Postman. And as you can see here, all I have done is I have just used the endpoint. I have just defined the endpoint here, defined my sources as TechCrunch, and I have defined my API key, free API key that was provided to me. And if I hit on send, I will get my request. Okay. I feel like this is the best way of mapping the data, like which particular data in the API call should be available where. So I now know that within the parameters section, I have to place sources and API key. So if I go back here in the HTTP request, you can see that in my endpoint, I just have the actual endpoint. If I go to parameters in the options, we have parameters. In my parameters, you can see that I have sources and API key. Typically, I have seen many people getting confused. Even sometimes I got confused where exactly should I be placing data. But having something like this, because you can even place the data in the body. So having something like a tool like Postman actually clears everything out. So whether you have to paste data in parameters, headers, body, wherever, you can actually directly do a test, simple kind of a test, and then place it right away. So let's run the bot now, and let's see how much time it took now to actually fetch the data. Okay. Earlier it took around around 17 seconds. Now it took around 2.85 seconds. Let me just first, before calculating the efficiency gain, let us go back and let's see how accurate this news is. Okay, so if I go here and Norwegian, okay, as you can see, apart from the top 2 news, which were basically launched half an hour ago, the Norwegian corporate, we are having this information. KKR, we are having this information, and index closes, we are also having this information. Okay, so basically, obviously, there is some delay in the amount of time when the data is fetched, but see the performance improvement that we have to do. So if I just do a simple calculation here, again 70 minus 2.87, and then followed by, so we have 83.11% of performance gain. This is again very huge when you once you consider a very large process that is taking around I will say 20 minutes to process. Probably it will just process in like under 4 minutes. So it is a huge performance improvement once it comes to API. So with that, let me see here. With that, I'm open to your questions.
Thanks, Sushmit. And I suggest you just take a 2 minutes breathing break first, and then we will ask more questions to you.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm just drinking some water as of now.
Yeah. It's an open house now. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask for the questions.
Okay, till someone asks the question, I will be answering some questions from the chat. So Sagar asked, does the processing time gets affected if the number of rows are in multiples of thousands? So Sagar, yes, definitely. If you would have noticed, we are with the help of link query or lambda queries, we are still processing each and every row one by one only. And the complexity is obviously O of n. But since the time taken to execute it is so less, the time of execution will be negligible when it comes to your traditional for loops. So where the traditional for loop might be taking around hours, you will be done in a couple of seconds or maybe 10, 20 seconds. And someone wants the Newtonsoft JSON line. Definitely, I will be sharing it in chat. Done. Okay, Atul is asking a very good question. What about the security of data that we directly posted as JSON object to queue? Definitely, you have to take care of you need permissions in order to properly upload it to queue. Obviously, there is a security concern whether we can upload HIPAA policies and you have other policies that you need to take care of. But if you have an option, consider this, okay? Because you can actually get you can actually optimize your bot a lot. Okay, so what I always suggest is if you have an option, then go ahead with it.
Okay, thank you, Smith.
I still see there are a few questions which are. Venkat, are you?
Any way to save exception images? Definitely. So what you can actually do is take a screenshot of the image, read it as an image object, use .2 byte array method, 2 byte array or two bytes method, and then upload. Once it is in bytes, you can either convert it into a string and upload it. And once you get it back at the other end from the queue, you can simply do a reverse engineering of the same thing. Like from string converted to bytes, and from bytes converted back into image object, and from image object use save image activity to save it.
Arijit has a continued question in the same answer which you have given, Ishmeet.
Yes, read and write cell in a loop take too much time. When you are reading and writing just a single cell, what I usually suggest is, look into your data. If you have to do it for entire data, table, then don't read or write a single cell. Read the entire data table, apply operation on all the rows via link query or via lambda operations, and then simply paste the data table back. By pasting, I mean write the data table back. Don't just write a single cell. If unfortunately you have a scenario where you need to read and write a single cell, I would suggest you to go for VB, invoke VB activity, and write a very small VB code to do the job. Yeah, definitely. So you actually, most of the materials are available in Google. What I would suggest everyone to do is, like, instead of directly searching your query, like how to do this in LINQ, just add VB. Because see, when you create any project in UiPath, you get two options, C# and VB. By default, everyone uses VB, and the syntax that I showed you today is of VB only. But most of the search result will give you C#, C# link query examples. So you actually need to map it. So whatever I personally like to do is I just like to add VB, and like it essentially gives me a couple of good results. Otherwise, I will try to make sure that some results are. I will add some sources in the community page as well.
Venkat, would you like to ask the questions? You are on unmute.
Hi, Shmit. Just want to ask, like, if we have sequence or a flow chart, what are the things we need to consider it to a state machine?
What are the things you need to consider when you have to convert it to a state machine?
Yeah.
Okay. So see, obviously sequences and flowcharts are having their own goals, but I will talk about sequence first. So see, sequence executes everything one by one. So until and unless you have a lot of if conditions available, it does not make a lot of sense to convert it into a state machine, because the idea of state machine is that I have a process and there are different states of the process. Okay, and it might run sequentially, but it also might not run sequentially, and I have to constantly jump back and forth between the states. If you have worked with Reef framework, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so converting a sequence into a state machine is probably it is something that I don't see happening quite often. Converting flowchart into a state machine is possible, but in that scenario, if you have a lot of conditions, I would suggest, firstly, to convert your entire code into modular, into small workflows, and then try to convert the cleaner flowchart into your state machine. Because if you have a lot of if-else conditions, switch conditions, you will be seeing a lot of transaction lines that are available on the screen. So it will be very difficult for you to understand which transaction line is going where and what is the condition in them.
Ishmeet, Ravin this side. I have a question. First of all, thank you so much for sharing this, quick tips to improve the performance of in UiPath. But in a quick way, could you please share some more, way or techniques or something which we can implement in our day-to-day process implementation or development, which help us to give better performance at the bot level or orchestrator level or robot level. So we would appreciate as well. Or if you want, you can conduct another session for us also. But as a trailer, if you want, you can share with us in a quick way.
Okay, so basically, I will just be sharing one thing as of now because it is coming right on the top from the top of my head. So I would suggest everyone to go through a book called Clean Code. It will really make you a better developer. But there is a very good line written in it that if you are having more than 3 levels of for loop, you're doing it wrong. Okay, so if you have for loop within a for loop within a for loop, I have seen people implementing even more than that. I have implemented it in my early stages. So if you have that kind of a scenario, you're doing it in a wrong way and try to change your logic. So just a single tip, it's just a tip, don't never ever use nested for loop conditions because you will probably be increasing your time complexity by, just by adding a single for loop, you introduce a time complexity of O of n squared. Okay, so time increased by square. I mean, that is huge. So you don't want that happening in your process. Okay. Even O of n is not considered very good, but there are scenarios where you have to go through each and every item, and you cannot avoid that in any case.
Thanks, Sushmit. And if you can take the last question from Sai Kumar on the data from Excel and then posting it back to the queue.
Okay, sure. When the data, the Excel is converted into data and pushed to queue as a single object, how do we set transaction status of the queue? Do we again push it? No. See, once the item is in the queue, you will see. So let's consider a scenario where you have a dispatcher performer model. Dispatcher push the item to the queue and you are pulling it with the help of your performer. So you're having the transaction item available with you, right? You don't have to actually push it or do anything else. You just use that transaction item variable to just set the status of the queue. That's it.
But Ishmit, like Sai, but Ishmit, like the data is completely written in single object, right? Like generally we push data in a new transaction. So here we have put it in a single object. So in single object, we have like 40 rows. So for each row, we should check whether the data is processed successfully or not. So how can we do that?
That is a different scenario. See, that is an entirely different kind of a thing. If you want to do it, then basically, if you want to check, add the status of each and every item, I think in set transaction status, there is another option of adding a couple of comments. You can utilize that. But what you need to understand is when the data is available in a queue, you can think of it like it is a standalone data. It does not know that it has multiple rows. Okay. So if you're thinking it from the perspective that how do I set the status of each and every item, then you're doing it wrong. Okay, what I would have done in this case is, if you will see set transaction status, see here, there is an option of adding details if there is an error. Okay, so firstly, I will mark the transaction item. Even if one row has failed, I will mark that entire transaction as failure. And in details, I will provide which exact row or which, if you, let's say your data table is having vendor ID. So which vendor it actually failed. I can provide it in details, and you can also provide reason. That's it. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Ishmit, I have a further question on the set transaction status. May I ask?
Please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. The question is that in a UiPath queue concept, if status is success, retry if it already is there, it won't retry. But if it is fail, then it will retry. Correct?
Correct.
And in case of fail, there's two kind of fail. A system failure, so my bad, application failure or system exception and business exception, correct? So in case when I'm setting set transaction status for business exception, ideally I'm not supposed to retry because the business exception it will fail or because of incomplete information. So I'm not supposed to retry, but because of this retry mechanism queue, it will create another row in queue.
Okay. So basically another row is not created, but I got your point. So you want to retry the business rule exceptions as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Ideally, business rule exception not supposed to retry.
Correct.
If it is system exception, I would think so. Then I need to retry because something happened with the system end. So I need to retry. But if it is business exception, I'm not supposed to retry. But in UiPath queue, there is no mechanism to control it as I understood. Maybe I'm wrong. So that's why I'm asking, is there a way I can control it or any other, or I need to, play around or tweak my, coding so that I will mark the business exception as success. And in the comment I mentioned, because of this is a business exception, sort of this.
Okay, so okay, this is a good question. So I have to get back to this, but
So Ishmeet, I can answer this question.
Please.
This is Vajrang. Yep. So when you're coding, see, normally I think you are sending exceptions using new exception, throw new exception. The best thing that you need to do, or while we are working in RE framework, there will be an option to actually bifurcate or divide first business rule exception and then the system exception. So when you write a code, if you're writing a try catch block, the code should be in try. And first in the exceptions, there should be business rule exception. And the second, it should be system exception. Well, in the code, you need to clearly mention which type of exception are you throwing. If it is a system exception, you need to send it as new exception. But if it is a business rule exception, then it should be throw new business rule exception. That's how you can divide the different exceptions. And if you want to,
I think you are talking about reframework, and in reframework we can control it. The issue which I'm talking about with Ishan. That's why I'm using the retry with the reframework, not at the queue level. I think Ishan understood my query.
So I think what you are trying to say is, even if the the exception is set as business rule exception, it will retry, correct?
Correct. If I setting retry at a queue level, not a reframework.
See, in that scenario, basically what you can do is, I think, okay, got you. So what you can actually do is, whenever you're populating your queue item, or whenever you're setting the status, as I told you, you can actually provide additional details like failure reason, correct? Well,
correct.
It turns out that these details actually come back once you retry. Just search, when you are, how can I say, when you're getting the queue item in your transaction item, no, don't usually what we do, we directly write dot specific content. If you will write dot details or something like that, you will be getting the actual reason of failure. You can track that and skip that item.
No, that technically or coding level we can manage, but at a product level that I'm looking for, that ideally this should be segregated, because end of the day, as we are talking about the performance, I'm doing some checks, it is degrading the performance. So at the starting level, if I can manage it, it helps us at the process level.
No, you are right, and we can definitely communicate it further. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shan.
Just one thing, it's Ishmeet. Thank you.
Yeah, my bad.
No problem.
Ishmeet.
No worries. Well, I would like to take a pause there. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Ishmeet, for bringing this topic up and helping everybody understand some of the unique way to solve improving performance and building a robust solution within the business applications, the RP solutions we are building. Did you accidentally turn on the video, or was it intentionally not turned on for the whole session?